Okay, so here's the big moment. What will win the Best Picture award? According to me, it deserves to be her, but according to the award seasons and stuff like that, I think it's going to predictably come down to two potential candidates. And I think they'll split it. I think they'll split Best Film and Best Director. So the film that will win it, you're hearing it here, is probably 12 Years a Slave. And I think that's a fine choice. On some level, it's that typical film that will win it. When people talk about it being the slavery film, this is what they're talking about, is that it will pick up probably Best Picture for being such a thing that's so close to the American consciousness. Much deserving choice. But I think if any film will sneak in, it'll be Gravity. Gravity just has that momentum going into the awards. And I just think Alfonso, I think that's how you say it, I question my pronunciation all the time of his name, will get Best Director. That is very much a director's film. That is his vision of the way a story should be told through and through. He uses everything from music and special effects at his disposal to get it done, and he gets it done well. So there you go. Best Picture, 12 Years a Slave. Best Director will be Alfonso whatever, sorry again, for Gravity. Okay, so let's assume that we kept Captain Phillips in just out of, it's kind of in the middle. And let's do that thing where we strip out the two films we haven't seen, okay? So Philomena and Nebraska, I'm sorry, you could be wonderful, but Australian cinemas, guess what? You're not quick enough. You didn't make this genre-defining list that Steve has created for entertainmentdemocracy.com. It's most sad, and we will miss you. And one day, retroactively, we might have to adjust you, re-edit you into this list. But let's assume those two films are gone from the list. Let's Be Nasty 2, and let's get rid of The Wolf of Wall Street and American Hustle. Sorry guys, you were good, you were wonderful, you weren't wonderful, and that's why you had to go. So, what would I put in that list? That leaves me with 4 films that I can nominate for an Oscar, because, you know, I have all that power. I'm on the internet, you know, and all the 10 people who will listen to this. You clearly, we're about to start a revolution when it comes to Best Picture category at the Oscars. Now, the film that I would choose would be easily for Best Picture would be Before Midnight. Before Midnight is that wonderful film in Richard Linklater's series of Before. I guess you'd call it the Before trilogy now, which makes an odd sounding name. Jesse and Celine, played by Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, they're the epitome of love. At first they were young and idealistic, and then later cynical and burnt out from love. But here we are again, almost 20 years after the first film, and we have them walking through the Greek islands. Beautiful setting. But here the reality of love and romance find voice. And what does that look like after 10 years of being together? It's not the same as it always has been. It's tired, the fights are the same, but they've taken different iterations. There's kids involved, there's all sorts of everyday burdens on this couple. And yet, we secretly want them to survive. They are our example of love in cinema. And what happens in the latter third of that film is a fight that isn't meant to be filmed, that isn't meant to be seen, it isn't meant to be scrutinised, where words and manipulation and all sorts of things come into the mix. And for a long moment you hold your breath at this voyeuristic scene and go, will they survive? Will they survive? And like all good Linklater films, it poses that question of, does true love last forever? We'll find out, I guess, if they ever make a new film. It's a deeply moving film. I guess it bears repeating that you probably need to see the first few films to feel connected to this. You may not feel the same emotional resonance if you haven't, but it's a wonderful film. Before Midnight, it deserves to win Best Picture. It won't. it's not nominated. It is nominated for Best Screenplay, which is great news. But again, I think it's a very crowded category and it won't get up there. So Before Midnight is number 1 on the alternate Oscar list. Number 2 that I would like to add to this list is the film called The Spectacular Now. Have you heard of it? Probably not. It's this really kind of stereotypical film. Wild boy meets conservative girl in high school and they fall in love. But it is filled with such wonderful performances by its two leads. Miles Teller, who you probably know from some kind of very ordinary comedies, you know, that 21 Over, I think it's called, really bad film. But here he's this rebellious kid who is super intelligent, and the one good thing in his life was the girl that he loved before this girl. And that falls apart. He's an alcoholic even before he's legally able to drink, and his dad is this deadbeat who he's beginning to echo. And it's this, he falls for the wonderful Amy in this film, who's played by Shailene Woodley, who again has not been in a ton of things, but her performance here is just beautiful. She's that typically naive girl from a movie standpoint. You know, she falls in love with the bad boy who's that first boy who takes an interest in her, and you know that her life is like her story, her love story is going to be set up for disappointment. But it's a truly beautiful film. It's wonderful. The performances are just so earnest and so convincing, and you know what, that's really all it takes, but somehow it works. Peter Berg makes a small cameo in it, and he's the opposite of Coach Taylor, and that's a statement in itself. Well worth a look. The Spectacular Now is number 2 on the alternate Best Picture Oscar list. Speaking of earnest films, Short Term 12 is the other film, the third film of my possible 4 that I could add to the Best Picture list. Again, it's a really small kind of indie film. It's about two 20-somethings, I guess they're 20-somethings, John Gallagher and Brie Larson, who work at it's like a shelter for young people who, basically adoption hasn't worked, fostering hasn't worked, they're crisis kids, and each of the kids' stories is deeply moving. The kid who is kind of central focused is she plays Loretta in Justified, the young girl in Justified, and here she is, this adopted kid, a kid whose mum has died and father can't cope, and she comes into this kind of crisis care. And yeah, like I said, each of the stories of these kids who can't find a home is sad, and if only they have 10 minutes on screen, their stories just affect you because they're just honest, they're not overblown in terms of drama, and a lot of it is done with a kind of a wry sense of humour. But then again, there's John Gallagher and Brie Larson's character, Grace and Mason, which are, and they're both the result of broken homes too. And the question of pregnancy comes up during this, and all their inner demons and problems and brokenness that they have kind of gone into, you know, fueling of healing these kids or trying their best to heal these kids, suddenly comes to the surface. All that energy and passion and anger suddenly becomes theirs again. They thought they had dealt with their past, but clearly not. And it's just wonderful. Brie Larson is conflicted and brilliant, yet optimistic and tragic, and amazing film. Short Term 12, number 3 on the top 4. 4, probably not a traditional Oscar pick, but still a good one nonetheless. The World's End, the final part of the Cornetto trilogy by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, and of course starring the wonderful Nick Frost. Now, you've loved Shaun of the Dead. If you can see behind me somewhere, there's a Shaun of the Dead poster. So I love these films. I loved Hot Fuzz, but I don't think any of them quite fit into that best picture category. You know, Shaun of the Dead is a horror film. Hot Fuzz is an action movie. They're not quite there. And while The World's End is a movie about a bunch of friends going on a pub crawl and walking into a town filled with alien invaders or body snatchers or whatever the appropriate term is, you know, they don't quite have a right word for it. It's also a deeply dark film. It talks about suicide and addiction and that notion of when we grow up and start becoming adults. When do we become the people we're meant to become, and what happens when that doesn't occur? What if we're still the same person that we were when we left school at 40? Like I said, it's wonderfully moving and really surprising that it goes in those places. Of course, it's worth noting that despite being that, it's also really, really funny and filled with wonderful action and that energy of filmmaker that Edgar Wright just brings to everything he does. Let's hope he does it with Ant-Man as well. Yeah, and it's the perfect Cornetto film in the sense that it's full. It's not just comedy or the genre, but it's also got this kind of emotional connection, this full story, this full heart. And all those films have always had heart, this one wears it on its sleeve. It's kind of a little bit let down by a final sequence which isn't as funny as it thinks it is, but The World's End clearly needs to be number 4 on this list, and it's a shame that the Academy hasn't recognised what these 3 guys from Britain have been able to do, which is to make great genre films that celebrate and spoof the same thing. That they managed to write films with great heart, and The World's End is some of that maturity as writers and filmmakers on display. So there you have it. Let's post that Oscar top 9 list. I keep saying top 10 because, you know, 9's a dumb number for it. Let me just correct that. Top 10, that's what we want next year. But let's post that up and see how you like it. Okay, I'm happy with that list. I think there's a great Best Picture category there. Anything on that list, with the exception of maybe Captain Phillips, you should feel happy for voting for. Okay, that's my thoughts on the Oscars, the Best Picture race for 2013/2014, however they phrase it. And I'd love to hear what you think. Like the video, hate the video, do whatever you like. Doesn't bother me so much. Thanks for watching. Bye.